The soft blue light of Haven's Rest Station bathed Lieutenant Dana Reyes's face as she leaned closer to her console. The familiar hum of the communications array, a comforting backdrop to the otherwise tense silence of her station. 2 years into humanity's admission to the Galactic Council, and Dana still found herself marveling at the sheer enormity of it all. 12 species, spanning hundreds of star systems, millennia of shared history. And then there was Earth, young, ambitious, expanding rapidly, too rapidly, according to some of the more ancient species. "Another complaint from the Vornax delegation," she muttered, filtering through the encrypted communications that streamed continuously through Haven's Rest, the neutral space station that orbited in the emptiness between star systems. "Third one this week." Her fingers danced over the holographic interface, cataloging the diplomatic message for her superiors. As Earth's communications officer at this prestigious posting, Dana's job was to monitor, filter, and forward the constant stream of interspecies dialogue. Most days, it was mundane: trade agreements, cultural exchange protocols, the occasional territorial dispute. But lately, there had been an undercurrent of tension. The ancient species that dominated the Council were growing increasingly concerned about humanity's rapid technological development and expansionist tendencies. Humanity had been expanding its colonial efforts at a pace that made even the typically stoic Xinthar uncomfortable, establishing outposts in systems that the older species had deemed too unstable for settlement centuries ago. Dana tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, her brown eyes narrowing as she noticed an unusual encryption pattern in the communication stream. It was Council-level security, but using an older protocol that her systems were equipped to monitor, likely an oversight on their part. Her fingers hesitated over the controls. Technically, she wasn't authorized to decrypt Council communications, but as Earth's representative, a single tap, and the message unfurled before her. Resolution 5291B. Immediate execution order for human cryptographer, Mira Kim, charged with espionage against Council security protocols. Dana's blood ran cold. Mira Kim was 3 doors down the hall, working her usual shift in the cryptography bay. They'd shared coffee just this morning, laughing about the peculiar way the station's AI always burned the toast. Mira had been explaining a new translation algorithm she'd developed for the more nuanced dialects of the Thraxi language. And now the Council had voted to execute her, without trial, without even informing Earth's representatives. Dana's hands trembled as she accessed the accompanying documents. The evidence was flimsy at best. Mira had accessed certain secure communications channels, but that was literally her job as the station's lead cryptographer. There was nothing indicating espionage, nothing suggesting she'd transmitted sensitive information back to Earth. This wasn't justice, this was a message. Before Dana could process what to do with this information, her screen flashed with an incoming station-wide broadcast. With a feeling of dread, she opened the channel. The cold, multifaceted eyes of Hierarch Sablon filled her screen. The Council leader's chitinous features were arranged in what passed for solemnity among the Xinthar. "Attention all station personnel in Council worlds. In accordance with Resolution 5291B, the human Mira Kim has been found guilty of espionage against Council security protocols. The sentence is immediate execution, to be carried out as a demonstration of Council authority." "No!" Dana gasped, jumping to her feet. But it was too late. The broadcast switched to a security feed from one of the station's detention areas. Mira stood against a wall, confusion evident on her face as 4 Council security officers surrounded her. There was no warning, no final words permitted. A flash of energy weapons, and Mira's body crumpled to the floor. The broadcast ended as abruptly as it had begun. Dana stood frozen, her mind refusing to process what she'd just witnessed. Then, training kicked in. With shaking hands, she activated Earth's emergency communication channel, transmitting both the intercepted execution order and the broadcast directly to Earth Central Command. Within an hour, an emergency session of Earth's United Nations Space Council had been convened. The broadcast of Mira's execution was played on every screen across Earth and its colonies. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Evelyn Zhao, commander of Earth's Defense Fleet, stood before the assembled representatives, her usually composed features taut with barely contained fury. "They executed one of our own without trial, without evidence, without even the courtesy of informing us," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. This was not justice. This was intimidation, a message that humanity is not considered an equal member of the Council, but a potential threat to be culled at their discretion. The chamber erupted in shouts of anger and calls for immediate retaliation. President Nakamura raised his hands for silence. "We have already initiated diplomatic protests through all available channels," he announced. "We demand an explanation, reparations, and assurances that no similar actions will be taken against any human citizen." "Diplomatic protests?" Admiral Zhao's voice cut through the murmurs. "With all due respect, Mr. President, they executed a human citizen in cold blood and broadcast it across all Council worlds. They are not interested in diplomacy." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, Earth chose the path of formal protest. Messages were sent to every Council world and to Haven's Rest, demanding explanations and justice for Mira Kim. The response came 3 days later, in the form of a Council-wide embargo against all human worlds and the announcement of a military blockade around Earth's primary trade routes. Hierarch Sablin's message was clear. Earth would comply with Council authority or face isolation and potential military action. "They've given us an ultimatum," Admiral Zhao informed the hastily reconvened Council. "Cease all expansion into what they're now calling restricted sectors. Submit to Council oversight of our military and research divisions, and accept punitive economic measures as compensation for our aggressive posturing. This is about more than one execution." Dr. Omar Khan, Director of Advanced Research, spoke up from his seat at the table. The slender scientist looked tired, his normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. "They fear our rate of technological advancement. This is a preemptive strike to contain us before we become too powerful to control." President Nakamura nodded grimly. "And your assessment of our options, Dr. Khan?" Khan exchanged a glance with Admiral Zhao before responding. "Sir, in light of these developments, I believe it's time to activate Project Eclipse." A hush fell over the chamber. Project Eclipse was Earth's insurance policy, a classified initiative that had been developing in secret since humanity's first contact with the Council. It encompassed a stealth fleet equipped with quantum cannons capable of bypassing most known defense systems, and the mysterious Null Protocol, a weapon of last resort that Dr. Khan's team had reverse-engineered from ancient technology found in the ruins of a dead civilization. "The Null Protocol has never been tested on an inhabited world," Khan continued, his voice heavy. "But the simulations are conclusive. It would be effective." "Effective at what exactly?" asked a representative from the African Union. Khan met her gaze steadily. "At erasing a targeted area from reality itself. Not destruction, erasure. As if it never existed at all." The silence that followed was profound. "We have 9 null devices," Admiral Zhao finally said. "1 for each of the Council worlds that voted for Mira's execution. 3 Council species abstained. They would be spared." "This would be genocide on an unprecedented scale," the European representative whispered. "Yes," Khan agreed simply. "It would." The debate lasted days. Earth's colonies were already feeling the effects of the blockade. Reports of Council warships conducting exercises near human outposts increased tensions further. Finally, by a narrow margin, The Security Council authorized the activation of Project Eclipse, with one condition: Earth would make one final attempt at diplomatic resolution before deploying the Null Protocol. As expected, this final overture was rejected. Council ships fired upon the diplomatic vessel, destroying it with all hands. The message was clear: submit or be subdued. That night, President Nakamura gave the authorization code that activated Project Eclipse. Admiral Zhao's stealth fleet, hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings, powered up their engines. Dr. Khan's team finalized the programming of the null devices, and intelligence operative Tariq al-Saif, who had been embedded in various council worlds for the past year, received his final orders. Tariq was having breakfast at a cafe on Zinthar Prime when the coded message arrived on his implanted communicator. As one of Earth's deep cover agents, he had spent months establishing his identity as a human cultural attaché, gaining the trust of mid-level Zinthar bureaucrats while mapping strategic locations across the planet. Now, sipping the bitter local beverage that passed for coffee, he decoded the message with a growing sense of dread. Deploy null device at coordinates provided. Activation in 72 hours. May God forgive us all. The small, black disk, no larger than an old Earth coin, felt impossibly heavy in his pocket as he made his way through the crystalline spires of the Zinthar capital. His target was the central energy distribution node, buried deep beneath the council headquarters. Once placed, the device would remain undetectable until activated remotely. As he passed through security using his diplomatic credentials, Tariq found himself studying the faces of the Zinthar he had come to know over the past months. The young clerk who always asked him about Earth music, the security officer who had helped him navigate the complex bureaucracy when he first arrived. Soon, they would all be gone, not dead, something far more profound. They would never have existed at all. Similar scenes played out across 9 council worlds as Earth operatives positioned the null devices at their designated coordinates. Each agent carried the same burden of knowledge, the same question: was this justice for Mira Kim, or had humanity become the very monster it claimed to be fighting? Meanwhile, aboard the EDS Retribution, flagship of Earth's Ghost Fleet, Admiral Zhao reviewed the final battle plans with her command staff. The stealth technology that rendered their ships virtually undetectable had been Earth's most closely guarded secret, one that would now be revealed in devastating fashion. The operation will proceed in 3 synchronized waves, she explained, her holographic display showing the positions of Council forces throughout known space. Wave 1. Ghost Fleet strikes on all forward Council bases, eliminating their early warning systems. Wave 2. Main Armada emerges from hyperspace to engage the Grand Council fleet. Wave 3. Activation of the Null Protocol on the 9 targeted homeworlds. "What about civilian evacuations?" asked her executive officer, Commander Torres. Zhao's expression remained impassive. "There will be none. The Council gave us no warning before executing Mira Kim. They gave the crew of the Damascus no chance to surrender. This is not a conventional war. Commander, this is existential. Us or them." On Haven's Rest Station, Dana Reyes had been placed under house arrest, along with all remaining human personnel, following the destruction of Earth's diplomatic vessel. Isolated from official communications channels, she had been reduced to gleaning information from sympathetic station staff and intercepted transmissions. What she pieced together filled her with horror. Earth was planning something unprecedented. The encrypted communications she managed to access spoke of a final solution to the Council problem. When the Ghost Fleet struck the forward Council bases, Dana felt the distant rumble of explosions even through the station's dampening fields. The emergency alerts and frantic communications told her that whatever Earth had planned, it had begun. "Lieutenant Reyes," a voice called from outside her quarters. "Stand away from the door." The locks disengaged, and a squad of heavily armed humans entered, Marines from Earth's Special Forces. "We're evacuating all human personnel," the squad leader informed her. "Admiral's orders. You have 5 minutes to gather essential items." "What's happening?" Dana demanded, even as she grabbed her personal datapad and emergency kit. The Marine's expression was grim. "Retribution." As they moved through the station toward the docking bays, Dana saw Council security forces mustering for a response. The Marines engaged them without hesitation, their advanced weapons cutting through the opposition with surgical precision. "This is wrong," Dana protested, as they rushed past the bodies of station security personnel she had worked alongside for months. "These people had nothing to do with Mira's execution." "They stood by and let it happen," the Marine responded flatly. "Complicity through silence." They reached the docking bay where an Earth shuttle waited, engines hot. As they boarded, Dana caught a final glimpse of Haven's Rest through the viewport. The neutral ground that had symbolized interspecies cooperation, now becoming another casualty in a war that had escalated beyond all reason. The shuttle detached just as Council reinforcements reached the bay, weapons fire dissipating harmlessly against its shields. As they accelerated away, Dana saw dozens of similar craft emerging from the station, evacuating human personnel from every Council facility within reach. 30 minutes to minimum safe distance, the pilot announced. "Minimum safe distance from what?" Dana asked, dread pooling in her stomach. No one answered, but their silence told her everything. Across 9 star systems, final preparations for the Null Protocol activation were underway. On Zinthar Prime, Tariq al-Saif made his way to the spaceport, his mission complete. The small ship waiting for him was unmarked, its stealth systems already engaged. As he boarded, he cast one last look at the gleaming city spread out before him, a civilization 3,000 years old, about to be erased from existence. "Forgive me," he whispered, though he wasn't sure to whom, the Zinthar, Mira Kim, or his own conscience. Dr. Omar Khan stood in the secure command center, deep beneath the Martian surface, surrounded by the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. Holographic displays showed the positions of the 9 null devices, all reporting ready status. His team of scientists moved with practiced efficiency, but their faces betrayed the moral weight of what they were about to do. "Null Protocol activation sequence initiated," announced his chief assistant, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Synchronized deployment across all 9 targets in T-minus 20 minutes. Khan nodded, feeling strangely detached. He had created this technology with the theoretical understanding of its power, but facing its actual use was something else entirely. "Begin final diagnostics." "Sir," a young technician called from his station. "I'm picking up unusual readings from the Thraxi device." Khan moved to the console, studying the data. "Fluctuation in the quantum field? That shouldn't be possible unless—" His blood ran cold. "Unless they've detected it. Accelerate the activation sequence. All devices. Immediate deployment." Aboard the EDS Retribution, Admiral Zhao received Khan's urgent communication as her fleet engaged the hastily assembled Council defenses. The Ghost Fleet had performed perfectly, eliminating the forward bases in a series of devastating surprise attacks. Now, the main armada had emerged from hyperspace directly in the path of the Grand Council fleet, catching them in a perfect ambush. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "Dr. Khan requests immediate activation of the Null Protocol. The Thraxi may have detected one of the devices." Zhao surveyed the tactical display. Her ships were inflicting heavy damage on the Council fleet, but they were still outnumbered. If the Council realized the true nature of Earth's ultimate weapon, they might bring their full force to bear before it could be deployed. "Send the activation code," she ordered. "All devices, immediate deployment." Across 9 worlds, reality itself began to unravel. On Zinthar Prime, Hierarch Sablon was in the midst of addressing the Planetary Council when the building trembled. The tremor was subtle at first, a vibration that could have been dismissed as a minor seismic event. Then the air itself seemed to ripple, like heat waves rising from sun-baked ground. "What is happening?" demanded a council member, rising from their seat in alarm. Sablon had no answer. The reports flooding in from across the planet described the same phenomenon, a distortion of reality that was spreading outward from the central energy distribution node. Where the distortion passed, nothing remained. Not destruction, not rubble, not bodies, simply nothing. As if that section of reality had been deleted from existence itself. In his escape ship, now safely beyond the Jinthar system, Tariq watched the sensor readings with a mixture of horror and fascination. The null device was performing exactly as designed, creating an expanding sphere of non-existence that was consuming the planet at an accelerating rate. Within hours, Zinthar Prime, homeworld to billions and seat of the Galactic Council's most powerful member, would be gone, not destroyed, erased. Similar scenes played out across 8 other worlds as the Null Protocol activated simultaneously. Panic gave way to oblivion as entire civilizations that had stood for thousands of years were wiped from reality in a single day. In the command center on Mars, Dr. Khan watched the sensor readings with a growing sense of the enormity of what they had done. 9 civilizations, he whispered, gone, as if they never existed. "Sir," his assistant said quietly, "we're receiving reports from the Edge systems. The remaining Council forces are in full retreat. Their leadership is... They're requesting immediate cessation of hostilities. Unconditional surrender." Khan closed his eyes. "Inform Admiral Zhao. The Null Protocol has been successfully deployed. The 3 Council species that had abstained from the vote to execute Mira Kim, the Elevin, the Geth, and the Noor, found themselves suddenly the sole survivors of a governing body that had stood for millennia. Their representatives, gathered on a hastily arranged neutral vessel, faced Admiral Zhao with a mixture of terror and disbelief. "You've committed genocide on an unprecedented scale," the Elevin ambassador stated, his translucent features rippling with emotion. "We responded to an act of war," Zhao replied coolly. "The execution of a human citizen without trial, followed by military blockade and the destruction of a diplomatic vessel. The Council chose extinction when it rejected our final offer of peace." "What are your terms?" asked the Noor representative. Practical, even in the face of catastrophe. The terms were simple: immediate recognition of all human territorial claims, reparations for the blockade, and a new treaty that would replace the Council with an equal alliance between the 4 remaining spacefaring species. With no leverage and the threat of the Null Protocol hanging over their heads, the surviving Council representatives had no choice but to agree. As news of the Council's annihilation spread throughout human space, the initial reaction was one of vindication and relief. Justice for Mira Kim had been served. Earth had faced existential threat and emerged not just victorious, but dominant. But as the days passed, the true weight of what had been done began to settle on humanity's collective conscience. 9 entire civilizations, trillions of beings, had been erased from existence. Not killed in battle, not defeated in war, but fundamentally removed from the fabric of reality itself. Donna Reyes, now back on Earth, stood before the memorial that had been erected in Mira Kim's honor. A simple stone obelisk. It bore not only Mira's name, but a continuously scrolling list of the estimated populations of the 9 erased worlds. A number so vast it would take days for the display to cycle through completely. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "I ask myself that question every day," replied a voice behind her. She turned to find Tariq al-Saif standing there, his face gaunt and eyes haunted. Like all the operatives who had placed the null devices, he had been awarded Earth's highest military honor. Like most of them, he rarely wore it. "I keep seeing their faces," he continued. "The people I met, worked with. even befriended. Now it's as if they never existed. Except in here. He tapped his temple. We're the only ones who remember them now. Dana nodded. The existential paradox of the Null Protocol was perhaps its most disturbing aspect. The 9 species hadn't just been killed, they had been retroactively removed from the timeline. Only those who had been beyond the radius of effect when the device is activated retained memories of their existence. To everyone else, it was as if the Council had always consisted of just 4 species. Dr. Khan resigned yesterday, Tariq said, after a moment of silence. Turned in his credentials and disappeared. Rumor has it he's gone to one of the outer colonies, trying to find some way to atone. Can there be atonement for this? Dana wondered. Tariq had no answer. In the months that followed, Earth grappled with its new reality. The temporary peace treaty with the 3 surviving Council species evolved into a more permanent alliance, with humanity taking the lead role that the Zinthar had once filled. Earth's colonies continued to expand, now unchecked by Council restrictions. Technological development accelerated without the limiting influence of more cautious species. But there was a shadow over this golden age, a moral debt that could never be repaid. Memorials like the one for Mira Kim appeared on worlds throughout human space, attempting to preserve the memory of civilizations that had been erased. Museums displayed artifacts that had been collected before the Null Protocol's activation, tangible reminders of cultures that now existed only in the memories of those who had encountered them directly. The debate over the morality of the Null Protocol became a defining issue in human society. Some justified it as necessary for survival. Others condemned it as an atrocity that placed humanity beyond redemption. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile traditional concepts of sin and forgiveness with an act that had literally removed its victims from existence. Admiral J retained her command but became an increasingly isolated figure, respected for her tactical brilliance, but feared for her willingness to authorize the ultimate sanction. In private moments, even she questioned whether the response had been proportionate, whether there might have been another way. President Nakamura, in his final address before leaving office, spoke to the heart of humanity's dilemma. We faced extinction and chose survival at any cost. Now we must live with that choice. The question before us is not whether what we did was justified, but whether, having done it, we can ever reclaim our humanity. Dr. Khan, working in self-imposed exile on a remote colony world, pursued a different question. Could the effects of the Null Protocol be reversed? His research, conducted in secret, sought to understand whether it might be possible to restore what had been erased, not just the physical worlds, but the trillions of individual lives that had been wiped from existence. Dana Reyes, haunted by her role in the events that had led to the deployment of the Null Protocol, left military service to join a diplomatic corps dedicated to building genuine understanding with the surviving alien species. Her experiences on Haven's Rest had shown her the fragility of interspecies relations, how quickly cooperation could collapse into existential conflict. "We have to do better," she told a class of new recruits at the Diplomatic Academy in Geneva. "We possess a weapon that can erase entire civilizations from reality. That power demands a level of responsibility and restraint that we have yet to demonstrate." Tariq al-Saif chose a different path. Using the skills he had developed as an intelligence operative, he began tracking down the scattered remnants of the erased civilizations, individual members of the 9 species who had been off-world when the Null Protocol activated. These survivors found themselves in an unimaginable position, the sole remaining representatives of cultures that, according to most of the galaxy, had never existed at all. Bringing these survivors together on a distant world beyond Earth's direct influence, Tariq helped establish a sanctuary where the languages, traditions, and knowledge of the erased civilizations could be preserved. It was insufficient atonement, he knew, but it was something, a refusal to allow the erasure to be complete. On the third anniversary of what had come to be called the nullification, Dana received an unexpected visitor at her office in the diplomatic complex. Dr. Khan, looking older than his years but with a renewed sense of purpose in his eyes, asked for a private conversation. "I've found something," he told her once they were alone. "In my research on the null effect, it's not gone, Dana. Not entirely." "What do you mean?" she asked, uncertain whether to feel hope or dread. "The null protocol doesn't truly erase reality. It shifts it, displaces it to another quantum state that's inaccessible from our normal perception. But the information, the pattern of what was erased, it persists at a fundamental level." "Are you saying we could bring them back?" Dana's voice was barely a whisper. Khan shook his head. "Not exactly, but I believe we could reconnect, establish a link between our reality and theirs, allow communication, perhaps eventually more." "The administration would never support this," Dana warned. "They've invested too much in the narrative that the nullification was necessary and final." "I know. That's why I came to you. Your work with the surviving species, your reputation for integrity. You could help me gather the support we need to pursue this outside official channels." Dana studied the man who had created the most devastating weapon in human history and was now seeking to mitigate its effects. "What about the risks? If we can access their reality, couldn't they potentially access ours? After what we did to them, they would have every reason to seek revenge," Khan acknowledged. "It's a risk. But don't we owe them at least the chance, the choice?" The question hung between them, encompassing all the moral complexity of their situation. In seeking to defend itself, humanity had committed an act that challenged its fundamental ethical identity. Now, facing the possibility of some form of restoration, they confronted the consequences of that choice directly. "I'll help you," Dana decided. "Not because I believe it will absolve us, but because they deserve to exist, even if only in a parallel reality we can barely access." Over the following years, a clandestine network of scientists, diplomats, and the few aliens who understood what had truly happened worked to implement Khan's theories. On a remote outpost far from Earth's central authority, they constructed a quantum interface designed to breach the barrier between realities. The day of the first attempted contact arrived with little fanfare. Only a small group gathered in the shielded laboratory: Dana, Khan, Tariq, and a handful of others who had dedicated themselves to the project. The equipment hummed with power as Khan made the final adjustments. "If this works," he warned, "we have no way of knowing what form the connection will take, or how they might respond. They will have existed in isolation for over 7 years, developing in ways we cannot predict. They may not even be the same species anymore," Tariq added. "The null effect could have changed them as fundamentally as it changed us." Dana nodded, understanding the implications. "Activate the interface." The quantum field generator pulsed, creating a shimmering distortion in the center of the laboratory. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then a voice, or something like a voice, emerged from the distortion. "We remember." The words were not spoken in any conventional sense, but rather impressed directly upon the consciousness of everyone present. With them came a flood of emotion: grief, rage, confusion, and something else. Something almost like curiosity. "We are here," Dana responded, uncertain whether speech was even necessary. "We seek to understand what happened, and if possible, to make amends." "Amends?" The concept seemed to ripple through the quantum interface, creating fluctuations in the field. "You erased us from existence. You removed us from reality itself. What amends could possibly address this?" "None," Khan admitted, stepping forward. "What we did cannot be undone or forgiven. I designed the weapon that did this to you. I am responsible." "No," came the response. "You are all responsible. Your entire species chose this path. The accusation hung in the air, undeniable in its truth. Humanity had collectively authorized the nullification, had celebrated its success, had built its new position in the galaxy upon the absence of 9 entire civilizations. Yes, Dana acknowledged, we are all responsible, and we will live with that responsibility for as long as our species exists. But we have established this connection because we believe you deserve to exist too, in whatever form is now possible. There was a long silence, or what passed for silence in the strange communication they had established. Then, we are not what we were. In this displacement, we have changed, merged. The boundaries between our 9 species have blurred. We are becoming something new. Khan leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. A composite consciousness? A new form of collective entity? Something for which you have no concept, the voice replied. Just as we had no concept for what you did to us. But now we understand. Power, choice, consequence. What do you want from us? Tariq asked. The directness of his intelligence training cutting through the philosophical exchange. Another pause. This one filled with a sense of calculation. Expansion of this connection. More interfaces, placed throughout the galaxy. Windows between our realities. To what end? Dana pressed. Observation, understanding, and perhaps eventually, return. The implications of that final word sent a chill through everyone present. Return. Not reconciliation or coexistence, but return, with all the potential for retribution that implied. If we help you return, Khan said slowly, what assurance do we have that you won't simply do to us what we did to you? None, came the immediate response. Just as we had no assurance against your actions. That is the nature of relationships between species with the power to erase each other. Is it not? Mutual vulnerability, mutual trust, or mutual destruction. Dana exchanged glances with her colleagues, seeing in their expressions the same realization that had come to her. This was humanity's true legacy, not just the act of erasure itself, but the moral burden it created. Whatever came next, whether healing or further conflict, would be shaped by the choice they had made when they activated the Null Protocol. We will consider your request, she finally said. But know this, many of us have worked to preserve what we could of your cultures, your knowledge, your existence. Not all of humanity rejoiced in your erasure. We know, the voice replied, with something that might have been understanding. We have watched through the quantum echoes. We have seen your memorials, your debates, your guilt. It changes nothing. But we have seen. The connection began to fade, the quantum interface reaching the limits of its stability. As the shimmering distortion collapsed, one final message impressed itself upon their minds. We will speak again, and when we do, both our species will face a choice about what kind of universe we wish to create. One where erasure is an acceptable solution, or one where even the most profound differences can coexist. As the laboratory returned to normal, the small group sat in silence, the weight of what had just occurred settling over them. They had sought connection as an act of atonement and discovered instead a new existential question. Having unleashed the power to erase reality itself, could humanity ever be trusted with its own technological prowess? And having experienced that erasure, could the displaced civilizations ever move beyond the desire for equivalent retribution? Dana rose first, her diplomatic training reasserting itself even in this unprecedented situation. We need to report this, but carefully. If the military gets wind of a potential return, they'll shut us down immediately. And build more null devices instead, Khan agreed grimly. Preparing for a war that would make the nullification look like a border skirmish. So we lie? Tariq asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. We emphasize the scientific breakthrough while downplaying the communication aspects. Dana clarified. Buy ourselves time to establish more interfaces, to build a relationship before the politicians and generals can intervene. The others nodded, united in their determination to pursue a different path than the one that had led to the nullification. They understood the risks, both of discovery by their own government and of the unknown intentions of the entities they had contacted. But having glimpsed the possibility of something beyond erasure and retribution, they could not turn away. As they dispersed to implement their plan, Dana remained behind, staring at the space where the quantum interface had been active. The final message from the displaced consciousness echoed in her mind, a choice about what kind of universe they wished to create. Humanity had made its choice once before, choosing survival through erasure. Now, facing the consequences of that decision, they had a second chance, not to undo what could not be undone, but to choose a different path forward. Whether they would take it remained to be seen. In the vast emptiness between realities, the composite consciousness that had once been 9 distinct civilizations continued its evolution, watching and waiting. It remembered what it had been, what had been done to it, and what it might yet become. It remembered the face of Mira Kim, whose execution had set these events in motion. It remembered the faces of those who had deployed the Null Protocol, and those who now sought some form of reconciliation. Most of all, it remembered the fundamental lesson it had learned from humanity, that in the vastness of cosmic existence, nothing was truly permanent, not even reality itself. Everything could be erased, and everything could, perhaps, be restored. The question that remained, suspended between two realities that had once been one, was simple. When given the power to unmake existence, what restraint could possibly be sufficient? What morality could guide species with such capability? What future could be built on the foundation of such devastating knowledge? Aboard a diplomatic vessel bound for a meeting with representatives of the 3 surviving council species, Dana Reyes stared out at the stars and wondered if humanity would ever find an answer, or if, having crossed the threshold of the Null Protocol, they had entered a new phase of existence where such questions had no meaningful resolution, only the endless negotiation of power, fear, and the faint, persistent hope for something better. The universe, vast and ancient as it was, offered no response. But in the quantum space between realities, something watched, and waited, and remembered. And in that remembering lay both the greatest danger humanity had ever faced, and perhaps its only hope for redemption.